Serious, if you could learn the honest truth behind any rumor or mystery from the course of human history, what secret would you like to unravel? I'd like to read the history of the world volumes that were destroyed at the Library of Alexandria. Edit. Thank you guys. My dad is the one responsible for this comment because I asked him some form this when I was a kid. He's been my history teacher throughout life. Oh my god, yes, I'm so curious about that. It's so depressing thinking about how much information was lost in that fire. I like to know about the thousands of years of undocumented human history. The one thing that fascinates me is how did wandering affect culture? That is, all our modern culture comes from people with borders. They may not be nation states, but pick any direction and you'll either hit a natural obstacle like a mountain, or land controlled by other people. But there was a time when that wasn't true. For a few thousand years, if you didn't like where you were, you could just pack up, walk a few kilometers, and be the first person ever there. How did that affect their mindset? Did they have a god of new places? Did they have people who were specialized in scouting out potential places to move to? I believe it would be a result in searching for food or resources. After one place dries up, go to another. Maybe chasing prey. Who the Isdal woman really was, what she was doing, how she ended up dead in such a remote valley in Bergen, Norway. No one has been able to identify her in 50 years. Edit. What's especially strange about this case is that she had about 8 different aliases which she used all over Europe, and then was found burned alive in the middle of a Norwegian valley. All eyewitness reports from people who crossed paths with her state that she stood out, and always seemed to be on high alert. I personally believe the theory of her being a spy. I'd like to know which people were the pedophiles that were involved with Epstein. The good news is Ghislaine Maxwell, who procured and groomed minors for Epstein and his friends, and was involved in all facets of his disgusting operation, has been arrested. She is expected to rat out all the big names in exchange for a more lenient sentence. I think it's more expected that she's gonna get killed. The identity of the Zodiac killer, or if the dudes who escaped Alcatraz really survived. The Alcatraz escapees almost certainly made it contrary to popular beliefs. A raft was found, and there were reports of a stolen car in the area. One that was later seen being driven by 3 men, even. Dom, I wasn't aware of that. I could see why that info would likely remain hidden from the public. Gotta keep Alcatraz impenetrable wall reputation. It's pretty legendary that those 3 men most likely pulled it off. The Mary Celeste, I believe that's the name, it was a U.S. merchant ship that was found completely abandoned floating in the ocean in the 1800s. I would also like to find out what happened to another ghost ship that was found with everyone frozen. There was a spilled barrel of alcohol in the ship, the lifeboats were missing, and a rope was trailing behind the ship. What happened is that the alcohol started evaporating, making it hard to breathe, so everyone left their stuff and went out on a lifeboat behind the ship to let it air out. Then the rope snapped and the ship went drifting away from the lifeboat. It's a little disappointing when I've known about the mystery for years, and someone explains it in a way that makes perfect sense to my adult brain. There are a lot of really ducked up industrial accidents out there. For example, the confined spaces horror story. Low oxygen environment, buddy passes out, second guy goes to help, and a third, and before you know it, 3 funerals and a hard lesson learned. My workplace did a whole first aid training seminar together earlier this year, and the trainer really wanted us to role-play situations that would come up in our actual workplace. They had a bunch of the CPR dummies for everyone to share and had us walk into a room one at a time where they were set up to see how we'd respond to individual scenarios so they could provide feedback. I walked into a room with all the dummies laid out on the floor ready for me to go from dummy to dummy, trying to get a reaction and then starting first aid based on what I thought was happening. I pretty much immediately went straight back out into the hallway and pantomimed calling 911, if Therese 8 bodies laying unresponsive on the floor in my workplace with no noise in the hallway before approaching, then Therese likely something seriously wrong with the air in the space. When I was a lifeguard instructor, I set up a scenario like this during training to teach them to use their brain. The students would take turns playing lifeguard while the rest were patrons. I would pick a person to be a victim and what kind of victim they were, and the lifeguard would have to scan the pool and watch until that person started drowning. My favorite scenario was when I had all of the patrons in the pool suddenly go limp all at the same time after swimming normally. 1,010 lifeguard trainees jumped in and were electrocuted. I would love to know what response would be correct here. I imagine working out people were electrocuted would have a process of testing before you enter the water. As a lifeguard, you usually only have 1 to 3 people drown at the same time depending on location, size and weather. If a small pool suddenly knocks out everyone at the same time, something other than a simple drowning is up. It could be electricity, but it could also be toxic fumes or toxins in the water. If the situation is not what you're trained for, don't try to fix it by yourself. Call for help. Firefighter here. We have a training video of police in America responding to a car crash. The dash cam and his mic radio is all on. You see one car and a truck with a large cylinder on the back, giving off white smoke and blowing away from the accident. Also you see 3 people all on the floor, all out of their vehicles. Police officer runs towards the scene to help, wind changes and begins to blow the white smoke back across him. You hear him take a breath of it and immediately realize he is in a bad spot. Tried to get out. He collapses next to the bodies he was trying to give CPR to. You literally hear him breathing his last breaths. We have a bunch of videos like that designed to show the results of a small lapse in judgment. The cop probably didn't have the training required for this situation. And the whole situation was a perfect trap. Smoke from a car that seemingly crashed. His only clue was, why would 3 people all manage to get out of their cars and then all collapse? Especially as the cars didn't seem too badly damaged. Another one of a nurse who walked into acid unknowingly to help someone. By the time it was through her shoes it was too late and she fully melted. D.B. Cooper, the hijacker that jumped from the jet plane with all that money, and what happened from then till now. The details of the Bronze Age collapse. We only know very generally what happened. Read 1177 by Eric Klein for details, but precious little specifics. ESP: who did what and why. Droughts, famines, revolts, piracy, population movement, trade collapse etc. are all involved. Mycenae, Minoans, Troy, Hittites, Ugarites etc. Every city from Greece to the Levant was burned down and every civ collapsed. Egypt, Assyria and Babylonia didn't collapse but were severely weakened for centuries. Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. Oh my gosh, you should read the article The Atlantic did last year, link below. It's very long, but so worth the read. It goes over what we know and what the likely scenarios are for what happened. Nothing has ever scared me so much as reading the theory of how it was done. Warning for anyone who clicks the link, there is some seriously scary description of what likely happened on the flight, theatlantic.com. I fly a lot for work, and one of my biggest fears about it is a pilot deciding to take everyone on the plane with them. I fly to a lot of the same places, so I'm really familiar with the routes, and normal deviations due to weather or high traffic, so anytime there is a weird path on a flight I'm familiar with, it freaks me out for a minute. That happened to my brother once on a flight from Baltimore to San Francisco. His plane started descending and he knew it was several hours early. When someone asked a flight attendant why they were landing early, she just burst into tears and said the pilot will make an announcement soon. My brother was terrified. The pilot said that there had been an incident in New York and that the FAA had asked their plane to land in Omaha, Nebraska, but that there was nothing wrong with their plane. And as you probably guessed, yes, this was the morning of 9,112,001. Edit: after they landed, the pilot also tried explaining what had happened, but also could not get it out through the tears, so he just told everyone to go out to the terminal and see it on the news. My brother watched the Twin Towers collapsing before even fully understanding why. But then seeing a plane flying into the building after just getting off of one made him sick to his stomach. And my brother wasn't the only family member on a flight that day. My mother was returning to Newark from Poland via London after going home for her mother's funeral. He was forced to land in Halifax, Nova Scotia. That poor flight attendant, they're always so professional and calm. That must have been horrifying, monitoring the plane and having to be ready for a potential hijacking. I'm glad your brother is okay. No idea why, but I'm just so interested in finding Genghis Khan's grave. The brutal extent they went through to keep it secret is truly messed up. I heard an interesting conspiracy theory once. Perhaps Genghis Khan actually had a simple cremation and the legend of his grand burial was used to keep his empire hungry for conquest and glory. Or those in charge pocketed the money for his grand burial and came up with that story after killing all the witnesses. Where the coolness originated from and why did it spread to so many places? It's kinda weird to me that it's so well known. I know what you are talking about in this vague comment.